oriented companies. We place very strong emphasis on the management quality because we believe that that is the most important thing. If the management is not competent, then even if the industry is good, it will not work out. We place a lot of emphasis on corporate governance standards, also on the robustness of the business model, because it may so happen that a particular industry is doing well in 1 year, which the markets are ignoring. And we would also like to be ahead of the market, trying to predict sometime into the future what is going to happen so that we are ahead of the rest of the pack. In terms of stock selection process, we use a combination of top-down as well as bottom-up. By top-down, we mean that we have to scan the macroeconomic variables. So variables like GDP growth, capital formation, the valuation parameters which look price to earnings ratio, EV to EBITDA, price to book, price to sales. And in terms of the qualitative parameters, again, as has been mentioned earlier, competitive strength of the identified companies within the sector and the sectoral analysis of the identified companies. Very important because it gives a lot of comfort to the investors. We have an advisory wing which Joshi had mentioned earlier, which is the research department. It is an in-house research department with about 30 analysts, as he had mentioned. And they track each analyst, each sector is being tracked by at least 2 analysts. So there is a primary analyst and there is a secondary analyst. And the benefit, as he mentioned there, was it gives an independent opinion. So apart from the research which we get from brokers, which typically could be biased, ours is an independent research input which we get from our in-house team. The decision making is the actual fund management process. So even there, apart from the fund manager, we typically have 1 or 2 assistant fund managers who would assist the fund manager in doing the day-to-day operations. So it also acts as a backup when the fund manager is traveling or is on leave. In terms of execution, actually placing the orders with the brokers, it is again a separate wing. It has no overlap with the fund management. So this is very important from a risk management point of view because we manage a lot of funds. So there is clear segregation between who is making the decision and who is placing the orders so that there is no bias there. We have again in-house fund accounting and control is what we have mentioned earlier, the risk management process. We have an internal risk management team. Set allocation in a strategic way depending upon the requirements of a particular fund. We do the portfolio construction, the stock selection, even the tactical asset allocation, and as I mentioned earlier, the transaction execution is there. And most important thing is the performance measurement and attribution. The fund managers are measured on their own performance, and part of the remuneration is linked to the performance of the fund which he or she manages. Risk management, when you mentioned.
Dr. Ali, to sum up in Arabic.
بعض الأخوة يمكن محتاجين إن نمر على الموضوع كله بالعربي. شركة مدينة مديرة المحفظة the manager of this fund أسسها الفاوندرز جلف بانك NIC شركة الاستثمارات الوطنية الأهلية للاستثمار جلف انفست المثنى KFH and over 200 investors. Inshallah, it will be listed first or second quarter of next year. السنة القادمة إن شاء الله راح تدرج في السوق. رأس مالها 15 مليون دينار, 15 million KD, the capital of this company. Why India? الهند عندها growth and summary, عندها معدلات نمو 7% 3 سنوات الماضية تقريبا معدل 7%, والتوقع أن هذا الجروث راح يستمر سنتين على الأقل القادمتين. البي ريشيو معدلات الربحية لسعر السهم في السوق الهندي الافرج ماله تقريبا 14 مرة, which is quite low إذا ما قارنته مع اللي حاصل عندنا في الجلف. الصندوق الهندي الحقيقة احنا وضعنا 2 sets of criteria, 22 معيار مختص في الربحية و6 معايير مختصة في الشريعة compliance التوافق مع حسب الشريعة الإسلامية. ومن خلال هذه 2 sets of criteria اخترنا 5 advisors، 5 مستشارين، من ضمنهم UTI اللي هو أكبر فند مانجر، مدير للمحافظ والصناديق في الهند. عنده كلاينت بيس أكثر من 65%، ويدير تقريبا 5.7 بليون دولار. الصندوق راح يكون متوزع على قطاعات مختلفة على أساس أن نحافظ على نوع الدايفرسيتي، لأن كثير من المستثمرين الحقيقة يبحث عن فرص بديلة آمنة. وأقرب صندوق مشابه لصندوق الهند الحقيقة هو صندوق المتنوع، اللي حقق عائد هذا السنة تقريبا 65%، منذ العمل به من سنتين تقريبا 110%. لمزيد من المعلومات احنا نرحب فيكم في دار العوضي في الدور الثالث، المبنى الجديد في الشرق. وانا ودي would like just to thank the organizers for this beautiful organization صراحة ما قصرتوا. There's a lot of volunteers here. Really appreciate what you are doing. عساكم على القوة. Thank you.
I have a question and answer. If anybody has any questions, you can raise your hands. Bring it
Yeah, compliance. One of them is, for example, you cannot deal with alcohol or weapons or whatever. 2, you cannot take more than 30% of the capital interest. 3, there is many. We have decided with our Sharia board. Our Sharia board is headed by Dr. Abdul Shah, who used to be the dean of the Sharia college. And they have decided on these set criteria. And then we went back to our colleagues in India and we told them this is what we're looking, this is the kind of companies we're looking. Sharia Islamic investment companies or industrial companies in India, but they work actually according to the Sharia. The rules of Sharia apply on them. So this is how we decided on these companies. And mostly they are operational, they are mostly in the technology, they are mostly actually blue chip companies. They're good performing companies, and that's how it was all by coincidence that they match our criteria.
Okay, what is the entry load and exit load? What is the entry load and exit load on the fund?
Okay.
The minimum unit for annual entry is 1,000 units. Unit price 1 KD. Plus subscription fees 1.6. The maximum 15% on all the distribution. That's it. Next, the redemption is monthly redemption. At last day of each month, we can't exit.
So the minimum is 1,000 KD. You can get in any day, any of the year, and you can get out monthly basis. You have to give us two weeks advance notice, and you get it. Or 1 month.
You talked about dividend cleansing, basically in the stocks where you invest, where it has, let's say, 30% allowable interest element or the conventional debt. Any dividend cleansing, what impact would it have on the net returns to the investors? Debt is acceptable. Now, having done that, obviously, when the returns from those particular stocks, you have to do a dividend cleansing, right? Because, as you rightly said, you have to pay towards zakat something. What impact it will have on the net returns to the investor?
Okay. Usually it's even less. So, and I'm not, the 30% is, I'm not, also, because they have their own figures, I just gave you as an example.
Can I just take it a bit further? Sorry about that, but when you see the dividend cleansing, the profits is not much, but the dividend cleansing will be on the entire profitability, if I may ask, even on the capital gains as well, because 30% of that element is not Sharia compatible, in which case, even that 30% of the capital gain will have to be cleansed. Am I right or wrong?
You are right, but still, again, it's not, because it's minimal, it's not, does not affect that much. I'll give you an example. One of the companies we have cleansed, the profit was about 53 million KD. We had to pay about 200 or between 200 to 300,000 KD. So it's
53 million KD, 200 to 300,000 KD.
yes. The sectors you can.
Still there?
Growth sectors and which also are Sharia compliant. There are basically three themes which we look at. One is the consumer spending. So this would be companies in the consumer goods sector. So companies like fast moving consumer goods, maybe a Hindustan Lever or a Nestle. And then we look at the infrastructure development. So a lot of companies which are related in that sector, maybe construction, cement companies, companies like ACC, Ambuja, or some of the construction companies, provided they follow all the Sharia compliance rules which are there. And the third is the related to export opportunity. So basically in the technology space, you are familiar with all the major names, or in the pharmaceutical space, again all the leading pharmaceutical companies, or even in the auto ancillaries, in the engineering sector. So these are the sectors which we are seeing growth, and also there are a lot of companies where there will be Sharia compliance.
Just a second question. Obviously, you said the investments would be in KD terms, and on the forex gains or losses, how is that going to be accounted for? And how is that factored into the future?
The underlying investment will remain in the underlying investment will be in Indian rupees, and your investment in the fund will be in Kuwaiti dinars. So obviously there is a foreign exchange issue which is there. But as you know, Indian rupee has been doing pretty well. The fund will not be, as per the regulations currently, I don't think we are allowed to take any hedging bet on this fund. We will not be doing that ourselves, obviously, on the fund side. But the rupee, I think there's enough confidence in the rupee in the last 3-4 years. I hope it continues like that.
Well, you get conflicting information. If you talk to ICICI Bank, they say that the rupee is going to strengthen, and then after 6 months they say it's going to weaken again. And it's already turned around now with the dollar getting stronger.
I don't know.
So, as UTI International, why wouldn't you be allowed to do hedging?
The first thing is the regulator.
Since you are an offshore fund manager.
The permission of there is no permission from the regulator on this front. So obviously the question does not arise right now. The second issue is obviously I can't comment on other people's report or their views on the fund. But the basic thing is the India story is strong. If you believe in India's story, the way we are growing, I believe that there's enough potential for you to grow. Whether there's a foreign exchange risk or not, I think the returns will be very good.
The same.
What I'm saying is there are clear parameters in financial terms. In terms of, let's say, debt to market cap, what could be the ratio?
So what sort of ratio are you looking at? Is it 2:1? Because to be Sharia compliant, you have to have a debt equity ratio of 2:1.
We have, okay. The Sharia committee is headed by Dr. Razak Shaji and Dr. Abbar Mishal, who is an ex-Rajhi investment from Saudi Arabia, and we have Dr. Islam Nanazi, who is the Sharia board member in investment dark. They have decided in 6 criteria. I don't remember them with the exact thing, what's the figures of them, but we have them in Medina. We can visit us tomorrow morning and we can explain each of those criteria. But they have decided on these companies. We screened the blue chip companies which we think which can make good money, have made good money for Indian investors. And we told them this is the kind